Is Spider-Man about to rob Peter to pay Paul? A lot of fans sure don't hope so, but who is this Paul? Why is he so controversial? And what will it mean if he shows up in Brand New Day? In early January, reliable Marvel rumor monger Daniel Richtman was one of several online sources to report that Iman Esfandi, best known for playing Ezra Bridger on the Star Wars series Ahsoka, had been cast in a role in Spider-Man Brand New Day. But Richtman took it one step further, writing on X, "Take this as a rumor, but I hear Iman Esfandi is playing MJ's boyfriend in Spider-Man Brand New Day." Of course, MJ would probably have a new boyfriend. She and everyone else on Earth forgot who Peter Parker was back in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Peter Parker? Peter Parker? Your coffee.
But the specific boyfriend that Esfandi may play is one of the most deeply hated characters in the past decade or so of Marvel Comics. No, Richtman didn't share the name of who Esfandi will play, but plenty of people seem to think he's taking on the role of Paul Rabin. A particularly vocal contingent of comic fans quite simply despise him. In 2022, writer Zeb Wells and artist John Romita Jr. kicked off their latest run on Amazing Spider-Man with a new #1 issue. The previous run, which was also co-written by Wells, had left the door open to Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson potentially rekindling a relationship after over a decade of being apart by editorial edict. That new first issue quickly slammed the door shut again when it revealed that MJ not only had no interest in talking to Peter after some mysterious series of events, but also had a new boyfriend named Paul, as well as 2 kids who enthusiastically called her Mommy. Wells and Romita slow-rolled the reveal, but eventually started laying out the details of what happened in Amazing Spider-Man issue 21. Paul is from a different universe. He and his father, Benjamin, discovered that symbols from ancient languages have powers that could be very helpful or very destructive. Benjamin used their cryptology to communicate with a Mayan mischief god, Wyatt, using its power to destroy Paul's home Earth. Paul killed his own dad for what he did and continued surviving on his own destroyed Earth. Later, the Earth 616 version of Benjamin Rabin attacks both Peter and Mary Jane, sending them to Paul's home universe. MJ manages to get Peter out of there, but winds up stuck with Paul on his devastated Earth for 4 years, even though it's only a matter of hours for Pete, who desperately works to return. Over the course of those 4 years, Paul and MJ come to rely on each other. He develops tech based on glyphs she can use to fight. She eventually uses that tech to become a superhero herself, Jackpot. They discover 2 orphaned kids and adopt them. They fall in love. When Peter finally gets back to rescue them, he discovers that MJ now has a family.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a real roller coaster.
At least some of the animosity toward Paul is tied to a story from far before he debuted. After years of dating, Peter and Mary Jane finally tied the knot in 1987's Amazing Spider-Man Annual Issue 21. They stayed married for 20 years, but the guys who had creative control at Marvel in the 2000s just didn't like that Peter got hitched. Editor-in-Chief Joe Quesada said in interviews that being married made Peter seem too old and took away the soap opera drama that used to drive Spider-Man stories. He told Newsarama, "While we can write and create wonderful stories about a married Peter Parker, we could create even better ones about a single one." The result was the 2007 event One More Day, drawn by Quesada and written by J. Michael Straczynski. In it, the Marvel version of the Devil, Mephisto, offers to save the dying Aunt May's life if Peter and Mary Jane agree to make it so their marriage never happened. Mary Jane finally agrees to the deal, so the marriage doesn't just end, it gets totally wiped from continuity. The comics that followed, themselves published under the banner Brand New Day, established that Peter and MJ were exes, but definitely avoided ever bringing them back together again as a couple. Things have stayed that way ever since. While the Brand New Day comics that came out of it were genuinely well liked, One More Day is widely regarded as one of the worst stories in Spider-Man history. On IGN at the time, writer Richard George wrote, "In trying to preserve the appeal of Peter Parker, Joe Quesada has actually managed to fundamentally undermine the character. As it turns out, a lot of readers liked that Peter and MJ were married. Quite a few by that point had started reading after the wedding and were used to the idea of a married Spider-Man. At the very least, a whole lot thought Peter and Mary Jane belonged together.
Isn't it about time somebody saved your life?"
Which could at least partially explain the hatred for Paul. Search Paul Rabin on YouTube or Reddit, and you'll find titles like "Paul is the worst character and the one that I have hated the most in my entire existence," or "Paul Rabin, the worst character in Spider-Man history." Dig a little deeper and you'll find the reasoning. One Redditor poster argued he stole Peter's life. Ultimately, a lot of fans think Paul is just some forgettable schlub, only created to put a wedge between Peter and MJ. Oddly enough, a lot of fans seem to also blame him for the destruction of his own home, though the comics themselves explain that Paul only worked with his father for a while before discovering his horrific plans. Then he stopped him. Paul and Mary Jane adopting their two kids, Owen and Romy, was a huge part of why they bonded together. But as it turns out, those kids weren't real. After Peter goes back to the destroyed Earth, he brings Paul and MJ back with him. Paul and MJ end up living together for about 6 months, raising their kids. But then the 616's Benjamin returns to kill them, and he reveals that the two kids were just magical constructs he created to mess with them. Eventually, Benjamin is defeated with some help from Ms. Marvel. Paul and MJ are deeply saddened by the loss of their kids. They choose to stay together but have to leave their apartment, moving in with MJ's Aunt Anna instead. Later, an enraged Peter, infected with all the bad feelings of Norman Osborn, attacks the couple out of jealousy and resentment. But later, after Peter gets better, Peter and his new girlfriend Shay go on a double date with MJ and Paul. Paul and MJ have their problems, of course. They go to couples therapy. MJ feels her old spark with Peter after a jackpot Spidey team-up, before Paul interrupts with a phone call. They end up adopting another kid, but that causes even more trouble for the couple. Eddie Brock's son Dylan is left seemingly orphaned after his dad's apparent death. So MJ and Paul take him in. While MJ is enthusiastic to do so, Paul is reticent, still hurting from the loss of Romy and Owen. Dylan also just didn't like Paul very much. Maybe he's on Reddit too. Meanwhile, Mary Jane was going through some changes. Namely, she had secretly bonded with the Venom symbiote.
Miss Jones, why do you want a lawyer if...
If I have nothing to hide.
Exactly. Unless...
I'm actually guilty of something.
Paul eventually put the pieces together and isn't happy that MJ has been risking her life as Venom after she's nearly captured by a symbiote-hunting government agency. Paul apologizes for his behavior and promises to change. But MJ says their relationship never worked and breaks up with him. They agree to continue co-parenting Dylan anyway. If Esfandi really is playing Paul, and he definitely has the look for it, just imagine that hair in a man bun. Then there's going to be a portion of the audience for Spider-Man Brand New Day that instantly hates him, well before he even appears on screen. That's probably the point. Marvel knows that the audience doesn't want MJ, Michelle Jones in this case, of course, to be dating someone else. She belongs with Peter. They've made 3 movies hammering home the notion that they're just such a cute couple, which made it so devastating that she completely forgot who he was at the end of No Way Home.
I don't really get excited about things. I kind of expect disappointment.
Because then you'll never actually be disappointed, right?
We doubt there'll be a lot of screen time, if any, in Brand New Day to dedicate to Paul being from another universe or his dad's work with super powerful glyphs. But it doesn't need any of that either. All it really needs is to let you know that Paul is dating MJ and he's not Peter. For a lot of fans, that's enough. Up until getting together with Paul, Mary Jane spent a lot of time decidedly single, focusing instead on her career. Her only other real post-One More Day relationship was with actor Bobby Carr. She ended things after she found out he was taking mutant growth hormone he had been illegally buying. Peter, though, he's had a string of hookups and relationships since his marriage was erased. And interestingly, none of them have generated the kind of fan animosity that MJ shacking up with Paul has. His main squeeze during the Brand New Day event was Carly Cooper, an NYPD forensics technician. She broke up with him after discovering his secret identity. Pete also had a brief, rocky fling with his roommate, Michelle Gonzalez. Peter sort of had a relationship with tutor Anna Marconi, but it was only during the period that Dr. Octopus had taken over his body. After Peter got his body back, he dated Leon Tang, but he later discovered she was working as a spy for the villainous Zodiac. He also had trysts with lots of other costumed heroes and anti-heroes: Black Cat, Captain Marvel, Silver Sable, and Mockingbird. Most recently, Peter's been heating things up with Ravencroft Institute nurse Shay Markin. While one Reddit thread does refer to her as female Paul, most of the commentary is far more measured. A lot of fans say they like Shay, though they don't see much of a path forward for her and Peter.